All right. Well, we're here with episode 2 of the Shuttlecock Podcast. I'm here with Antonio Marquez of Spine and, just a good deal of other Kansas City hardcore bands over the years. How you doing, Antonio?
What's up, dude?
So I guess we can just start with just the most recent developments with your music and just kind of go back after that. So your band Spine that you sing in just got signed to Bridge 9 Records, a pretty, infamous hardcore label. Just tell me about how you got linked up with them.
Yeah, so basically, we've already done a few 7 inches. We did the LP, and so we wanted to do another LP. We've had some material that we recorded, just some rough stuff, and I think up until this point, we have kind of had like an aversion per se to being like on a label, and I think that kind of goes back to like when we originally wanted to release the 7-inch of ours with the LP with Youth Attack. It wasn't that it was like an awful experience, but we just kind of realized early on that we wanted to have more control over all those things. And so when we were kind of brainstorming ideas of where to go for this next record, John at that point in time had stated he no longer wanted to release the records, which that was a big point for us, is that we recorded that stuff ourselves, and then we basically pressed them ourselves and released them ourselves. And so with John not wanting to do it and wanting to explore some other ideas, we just talked and wanted to kind of see like what opportunities would be out there if there was a label that would be interested in giving us the resources to be able to maybe record in like in an actual studio or have money to do some cool artwork and really kind of put it all out there. And I think the situation with Bridge 9 came up and ended up being a really, really cool opportunity for us. Thus far, they've been incredible to work with, and so we're very, very excited about the record. So, yeah.
And so you're saying that John, like his label Bad Teeth Recordings, had put out most of your guys' past stuff. Why did he choose not to put out this one? Was it just like too much work to keep putting in every time?
Yeah. So John's getting ready to get married, and he just bought a townhome in the suburbs of Chicago. And the amount of money that goes into putting in the record is a little over $1,000, $2,000 or so, and then having to deal with mail order and distribution and all that stuff is just pretty stressful. And I think for him, he just kind of felt like, that coupled with the fact that we're kind of at a point where, we should maybe look into taking that next step to see what's out there. I think that's what kind of brought him to the conclusion that he'd, much rather not put it out for those reasons. But I'm sure if push came to shove, we would have put it out ourselves. But I think with us being a band now for, when did we start? 5-6 years now. So, having as many releases that we've had thus far, I think we kind of just wanted to see what we're kind of capable of, I guess, from having a label support us and maybe some better distribution and having resources to record. We just kind of wanted to see what could happen and if that possibility was out there. So
yeah, because you guys have like gained a pretty healthy following, from like all the touring that you guys have done and all the releases you've put out so far. So I guess it is kind of logical. Like you've pretty much tackled everything that like a completely independent band can do at like for the genre of hardcore. So I think. Yeah, I guess that is really the next step if you want to just keep moving.
Yeah, I mean, if you think about it, like, and this was a serious conversation we had. It's kind of like, where do we go from here, right? We've played. I mean, we haven't played the West Coast in a while, but we've played the East Coast several times. Played the Midwest. There's really not a lot of things per se from a show perspective of like things that we really want to do other than maybe go to Japan and Europe, which are ultimate goals. And And so, what is that? What do we have left to do? I mean, Spine's not like Rush or anything, right? We're not going to have like some crazy another record that's going to sound very different than the first, everything's, kind of a slow evolution of our sound. Nothing drastic. So it's like, what do we do? Where do we go? And where do we want to take it, and do we want to take it anywhere? How do we feel like we've accomplished everything we've wanted to do with this band, And I think we hadn't yet, and this was kind of one of those steps in that direction,
Mm. So you guys are kind of on the you're preparing to release your LP with Bridge 9 like later this year, early next year, you'd say?
Yeah, I mean, I would say like safe side, I'd say early next year. But who knows? Maybe it'll come out by the end of this year. So, but I think ideally, it would be early next year as we've been talking about it. So,
and you were saying that you don't think it's going to have like all these crazy new concepts and sounds for the band, but do you have the songs that you guys have been working on so far sound any different at all to you than past stuff?
Sure, absolutely. I mean, everything that we've done has been a little bit different, right? But, we don't have unfortunately, we don't have fucking synthesizers and stuff on the record, which would be sick, right? But that's not the case. That's not really the progression we're going into. So I would say the material that we've been coming up with thus far, especially the 2 songs that we released in the promo, are definitely more in line with the Deny 7-inch, where it's just kind of a heavier, maybe more punishing sound, but still heavy influence with the Cro-Mags, which is a band that we all love immensely, especially, the era of Age of Quarrel. So I love all eras of Cro-Mags, but I just need to throw that out there because there's many people in the band that don't like all eras of Cro-Mags. So, but yeah, I would say that the LP will have a lot of Cro-Mags influence on there.
So I guess, you're on the verge of, putting this out and, hopefully reaching, the largest audience you have so far. But I guess I'm a little curious about just how you became involved in hardcore in the first place. I guess we'll just kind of rewind and get back to this point at another point. So
sure. Well, truth be told, the way I got into hardcore was not through punk music, right? I got into hardcore through metal. I was into, I was always trying to find the most extreme style of music that wasn't super noodly and ridiculous, right? No offense to anybody that likes all that stuff, but I don't like it. It's not my thing. So I always wanted to hear what was the most raw, Neanderthal, bare bones, where, straight up Adam and Eve shit. Where did this come from, right? And so when I was younger, I would seek out bands from Rockabilia catalogs and, CD, a Columbia House, they send those pamphlets for 8 CDs for a penny or something like that. Because we didn't have, you didn't really have the internet wasn't that, jumping and, jiving, I would say. So, I got into it, through metal. So my dad actually from New York, he had a few records. He had an S.O.D. record. He had a Cro-Mags Age of Quarrel record, and he had a Agnostic Front Cause for Alarm record. And so, honestly, when I was younger, I would see the Cause for Alarm record, which Sean Taggart did the illustrations for it, and there's a skinhead on it or whatever. And as a kid, you hear skinhead, you're like, oh, Dad, why are you listening to this racist music, right? Regardless of what you think about the songs, and if they're questionable or not, but just the imagery of that record, I'm like, Dad, this is racist, right? This shit sucks. I'm not gonna fuck with this ever. But at that point in time, I guess I just wasn't open to it until we got Napster, right? So we're talking I don't know, what is this, 99, 2000 or whatever? Napster. And my dad, first 14 songs or whatever that are downloaded on there that take forever. One of them was World Peace from Cro-Mags. And then I listened to it. I was like, man, this is incredible, changed my life, right? And then from then on, I just started to kind of pick away kind of what are some bands that sound like that? My introduction to more punk, my first introduction to punk sucked. It was awful. Yeah. I remember in 2001, Sam Goody, the CDs were like $20 a piece, $25 a piece, which is ridiculous, right? Yeah. Thinking about that now. But they had a section, if it was like a comp section, it was a lot less money. So like maybe like $5 to $10. And then it would be heavily discounted, especially the time of the year. So I remember I went in and I was like, you know what? Like, I want to find some more stuff like Cro-Mags or whatever. So what do? I fucking buy Punk-O-Rama Volume 1, 2, and 3, right? Nice. So I get them and I'm like, I'm listening to it, and granted, in my head, like I've been listening to like more like, you know, new metal and like doom stuff, right? So I haven't really like embraced this whole like explosion of pop punk, which is what a lot of that stuff was on there. Yeah. And I tell you what, I thought all that shit sucked. I was like, this is all throwaways. Like there's a few songs on there. Like I think Agnostic Front had a song on there, and it was like, I can't remember if it was Riot Upstart or what. Then H2O's song, Guilty by Association's on one of the Punk-O-Ramas. And I don't like H2O. Like, they're not really my thing, but that song I really liked. I mean, it's really spoke to me at that age, you know, because, you know, you're hanging out with your, like, skater kids and, like, you know, fucking around, like, doing, like, crazy stuff. But, like, you know, I was a good kid. So, like, I never got into those things. But I'd always get in trouble because, you know, I'm hanging out with these guys. Guilty by association. Judged by who I know. So anyways, I got it, and I remember it sucked. So what did I do? I went out and bought the Busta Rhymes CD, and I bought the, the System of a Down Toxicity CD.
Ooh, you just like completely rebelled there.
Yeah, I was just like, if this is what punk is, like I can't do it. Like maybe it's right. Maybe there are people who are like, yeah, punk's dead, right? So I just like, I don't know. I was like, this sucks. I don't want to listen to this stuff again. Like, this is not extreme to me. This is not like cutting edge. This is a lot of it's like goofy, like sappy stuff. I think Slick Shoes is on there, like Millicolin, although the Millicolin song on there was pretty good. There was just a bunch of weird stuff on there. So anyways,
not the best introduction.
Not the best introduction, but I will tell you that my first kind of like entry to this whole thing was metalcore. So metalcore around that time was starting to get kind of popular, and I remember I can't remember who the first metalcore band was. They weren't even metalcore, right? But they were like really extreme, and it was Lamb of God. So the first Lamb of God thing I ever heard was the New American Gospel, and I remember when it came out, and I was like, man, this is like so sick. This is extreme. Like, this is powerful, and it's not like super noodly, like goofy metal, right? And then from there, you know, it led me down like a path of like, you know, bands like, what was the next band that I listened to? Every Time I Die, right? So I don't remember the connection with the two of those, but I think it was around the time that I'd started my zine. So as I was getting into like more extreme and like metalcore and stuff, I'd started a zine, and it was mostly a ploy for me to be able to get free CDs and tickets to shows, right?
Yeah, you've been telling me that before. Wait, so what was that zine called?
Rule Reporter, actually. So, and the name is like ridiculous, but the reason why the name came about is because I needed a name to tell the record companies so that I could get into these shows. Yeah. And there was a newspaper from the town where I was from called the Rural Reporter. Because it wasn't in the city, so it was the Rural Reporter. So if I put Rural Reporter, that sounds close enough. And if they get mixed up at like a show or on the guest list, they're going to be like, "Oh, it's the same thing. It's fine."
And right? you've kind of finessed that.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like, you know, I do want to make a magazine, like a physical magazine, at some point. Like, that's just something. Like, you know, reading music magazines like growing up was like kind of important to me.
Yeah.
But like, I named it Shuttlecock Music Magazine, just kind of like, when I started, it was just a blog.
Yeah.
So like the fact that I put Music Magazine at the end, I was like, okay, so this is going to sound much more official and get me into shows, hopefully. So that's kind of a good way to go for any like budding journalist or scammer, even.
Yeah.
Music scammer.
Yeah, I guess.
Is it safe to call you that?
You know, I'd like to look at myself as an opportunist. So I don't know.
I know you probably did some like really cool writing.
Yeah, I mean, a lot of it was, I mean, the writing part of it was cool. And that was something I kind of explored about myself. I really love music. So being able to write about it was awesome. But getting the CDs and being able to go to some of these shows and meet some of these people was awesome, you know? So when I started this zine, it was basically a ploy so I could get metalcore CDs and like hardcore CDs, right? So, and it started off like, I would go to shows at the El Torreon, probably 2003. I remember seeing like 18 Visions for the first time, another like Orange County like metalcore band, and like bands like Every Time I Die and Unearth and Thrice wasn't, they were never like a metalcore band, but, stuff like that that's in line, I would say more like in line with that. And I just, Zayo, like I would just, write reviews on that stuff. I do show reviews. And then I had like a few friends that helped me because I didn't know how to run a website. So I had a friend from newspaper who knew how to run a website. So he ran the website. I had a few friends on like staff that like wrote reviews too and stuff. So, cause eventually it just got to a point where I was getting offered to go to stuff like all the time. But anyways, that was kind of like more my entry into like punk was more like metalcore and like bands like, youth crew bands that were like, more like Champion and Bane. And I remember listening to Youth of Today for the first time in Chain of Strength and just being blown away. Like Youth of Today, like the GOAT, like the best like youth crew band and one of the best like hardcore bands of all time, right? And so that's really how I got into it. And then, creating the network of friends that I did really helped too, because I knew about punk for like a long time. And I loved punk for a long time before I embraced punk, if that makes any sense. So like, and I'd say I'd probably attribute a lot of that to one of my best friends, Jesse Street. So like when I was younger, going to shows and stuff, and especially being like north of the river, it like had a bad stigma, especially with kids like in the city and like east of the city and stuff was like, I don't know that they're like, mommies and daddies' kids, you know what I mean? And like, but I'd legit like I'd get dropped off at shows when I was really young, and Dad would come pick me up, and Jesse was always really cool. But being around him, at a young age and stuff, and Jesse's not that old, but being younger, because when I was younger, I always thought he was just so much older than me, and but just kind of understanding that DIY spirit of punk and like embracing it and kind of taking it to the links really has brought me to where I'm at today with punk and hardcore, right? Because there's a certain amount, in my opinion, I think there's a certain amount of respect and a certain amount of, I guess, a certain amount of ideology that you have to embrace when it comes to punk to really get it, right? And the whole point of it is probably that DIY ethic, right? Hence why Spine up until this point has always put out our own stuff, Not that now that we're going to put out a record on a label that makes us not that, I think that just takes us to a different level. We still embrace those ideals. I mean, I still do all the mail order. I still do a lot of the stuff, but embracing those ideals, I think, is what is punk, right? Mm-hmm. So, but I would say that was my entry into punk at a young age.
And so you said you met Jesse in that era. Is that like, did you meet him through school or?
No, the Kansas City Hardcore message board.
Oh yeah.
Back in the day, it was just so the message board, I can't remember what version this one was, but like message boards at that point in time was just like a web page, and then you had threads, right? And then you had like replies into the threads. It wasn't like you actually went into a portal and you could read everything. It was just like you could see stuff, and that was like the most insane experience, because like, and it's very intimidating, right? Because you've got all these guys, you've got Sarge, Chris, Ork, you've got like John Barker, Jason Shrout, Jesse Street, Mary Casey, Nick Beffert, Dustin Albright, Austin, like you've got like all these guys, right? And really like what really dominated the Kansas City hardcore scene when I was younger wasn't like punk bands, right? I knew about them, but it was mostly like that metalcore scene. Yeah. So, and those guys were notorious, like straight up bullies, 100%. Yeah. Like, and they would definitely like fess up to that. But that's how like, and really like from there, like I met Jesse at shows and I met those guys at shows. I didn't really get to meet them like I did until like being more involved on that message board.
But, so you heard about the shows happening close to you through the message board?
Yeah. Yeah.
Dude, like you mentioned, like as terrible as like some of that message board culture can be, like if you're like a part of one of those and like you're on there all the time, like that can be like some of the most just entertaining
absolutely
stuff you can run into. Like I think I played like RuneScape for a while when I was a teenager, and like you get on like RuneScape message boards, and
I bet it's wild, bro.
Probably maybe rivaling hardcore message boards.
Well, I know the RuneScape like memes are like out of control. You know, like I don't understand them because I don't play the game, but like I see them and I fucking laugh. I think it's awesome. You know, but yeah, I mean like. The message board culture when I was getting into like hardcore and punk was like a very big thing. Yeah. Like the early 2000s was like all about that stuff. And zines were still pretty important then too, because, you know, the things hadn't really kind of like really developed with the internet as much yet until about the mid to late 2000s, obviously. So listening and hearing about new bands and stuff like that was mostly still through flyers and message board posts. So
and now you're on Bridge 9, originator of the B9, the infamous
B9, which is really funny. I was on it today because I only go on there now just to. There's a group that they do like bootleg and like fan club shirts, and I really like fan club shirts. So. And I just go on there just to see like what's being posted or what like who's making what or whatever. Because you used to be able to go on there and get like some pretty good information, right? But now it's just there's all kinds of, and there's people on there that aren't even like really connected to hardcore that go on the B9. But I remember when the B9 broke the case of the Jeep bra. I don't know if you know what I'm talking about, but Jeep Brow is this picture of this guy in a fucking Jeep, and he's like yelling out of the Jeep, and it's just like a really funny. It's like one of the first pictures of like the internet and like the meme culture and everything like that. And they tried to find who this guy was, right? And it's just like a ridiculous meme, like just a ridiculous picture. But they ended up like working together with a bunch of people and like ended up finding like the actual person who the Jeep bra guy.
I guess that kind of stuff happens more on Reddit these days.
Yeah.
But like you will run into some good like detective work on message boards occasionally.
Absolutely. And I would say like Reddit is probably more in line with what the B9 is now, or was, I guess I should say. I don't really know what else gets like talked on there. It used to be a cool place where you get like I'm really big into like collecting records and shirts and stuff like that, and tapes. And it used to be a really good place to just kind of meet people from all over, especially the trade section where you could, you know, a lot of stuff would move. But really the introduction to Facebook Marketplace and all those groups and everything has kind of killed that culture a little bit. So now, like, I don't even know what people do when they go on there. I mean, that's to get their news and stuff like that. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So
you're going to these earlier, you know, Kansas City hardcore shows where, you know, you found out about them on the message boards or through the flyers and stuff. So what were some of the first bands, like local bands, I guess, that you were seeing, and maybe the first one that you got involved with?
The first one that I had like band that I became friends with?
Or just like some of the early, like the bands you saw a lot, and then the first one that you joined. So
for like punk bands, like Crapcore was like awesome, and Anxiety Attack. I didn't go to the show, but the infamous Anxiety Attack show at the what was it, at the Brookside Community Center? I can't remember where it was. I think it was like in January of some year. We're Fucked played. Which was really sick, but I didn't go to that show.
What happened to that show?
It was just insane. I mean, just think about having like a punk show in a rec center, right? It's just, and Kansas City has been short of like all ages venues, so like that whole idea, and I think Garrett McBride got into some shit there. I don't remember. Maybe he got into a fight or something, but yeah, it's just wild. But those were like, I remember like those shows, like even before, like I said, like I can't remember who the show was, but like, you know, like 18 Visions. Like I remember Throwdown and Terror. That was like 2004.
So you're probably at like a bunch of Torion shows.
Yeah, I mean, I would say 95% of all the shows I went to were at the El Torion. There was the Spitfire for a little bit. I went to shows at the Spitfire, but not many. And then, of course, when those closed down, Jesse and Ricky, I think mostly Ricky, and then Jesse and Jordan helped book shows for the Anchor, and then Jordan opened up the Valhalla. So there'd be a lot of shows there. And I would say that the El Torion was like a time where I was going to shows, and and, probably meeting people. But the era of like the Anchor and Valhalla and stuff, that was where I probably became more involved in punk and hardcore. So I don't know when that was, 2006 probably. Maybe 2005. I don't remember. But anyways, so that was probably, I would say those were like some of the shows that I remember like probably more fondly. And I think We're Fucked for me was like a band because Jesse was in that band and I was friends with Jesse. And so I think for me, that was kind of like my transition to more punk, more bare bones, like hardcore punk stuff. No frills, kind of just fast, aggressive music. And that and Give It Up, which was like a band that Nick Beffert was in. Both, I think Jesse, Dustin, Taylor Madden, Daniel was in that band. So yeah, those were like the bands that kind of like, moved over. Honestly, now that I think about it, it had to have been earlier than that because Sorry Excuse started in 2008. So it had to be like 2005 at least when I started going to those shows at the Anchor and stuff. But regardless, 2008 is when me, Jesse, Taylor, and Daniel had started Sorry Excuse.
Awesome. So that was your first band that you'd...
Yeah, that was my first band. I made up a band one time to a girl. I don't know when it was, middle school. I told her I was in this band called Sin, S-Y-N, and it was like this like doom goth band because I like that stuff. So
then eventually she's like, "Hey, can I hear your band?" And
no,
like,
you know what I did?
You do.
All right, so I can't remember the brand or whatever, but when you could get CDRs back in like the early 2000s, you could get them that were colored. They were a little bit more expensive than the regular ones. So I got a green one. Obviously, I love Typo Negative, so I got a green one, right? And it was the brand was like Verbatim or whatever it's called, Verbatim or whatever. Anyways, and then I got a black magic marker and I wrote SYN on it. Here's the thing. That was actually a demo of a friend of mine that sounded kind of like that. And I just like had him just burn me the copy and I wrote that on there and gave it to her. Oh, and I had one of those thin jewel cases that was also green too.
That's wild.
Yeah, it's true, man. What can I say? Oh, and one time a girl, I think I was like in 4th grade or 5th grade. I wanted her to like be my girlfriend. So I got this like old basketball and printed off at the library Michael Jordan's signature. And so I tried to retrace the signature on the ball and give it to her and say, "Hey, look what I got you." Yeah, it was pretty embarrassing. It was pretty bad, but she didn't know any different. So and she ended up being my girlfriend. So it's pretty sick.
You're a smooth guy, Antonio.
I don't know if I would say I'm smooth, but again, I'd say I'm resourceful. I'm an opportunist.
Okay, so Sorry Excuse, is a band, I think for a lot of people, at least that I know, that are maybe like at least like a couple years older than me. Like, I think that was a pretty important band for a lot of people that just, like, so that was after you had been going to shows for a little, and then you're finally getting to start your own bands with the people you met. I think for the shows that I started going to back in like 2012, 2013, the people who were finally starting bands then, Sorry Excuse, and that wave of bands was like kind of influential to them. So, yeah, I think that's just kind of where I fall in the...
That's good to hear because honestly, I'm a really bad judge of stuff like that. I'm a really bad judge of people actually like anything that I do, so, or anything that I'm a part of, really. So, like, that's really cool to hear. As Sorry Excuse is like a band that, for me, is a very important band. Spine is very important to me for different reasons than Sorry Excuse. Sorry Excuse for me is like a band that I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about my friends then. I learned a lot about how I wanted to kind of live my life and the things that I wanted to take from it. I experienced things in it that I never thought I'd ever experienced before. So for me, it was like a really special thing for me. Special band, great group of guys. But I think, I wonder sometimes because I don't know if like people actually ever liked that band, to be honest. I mean, we had friends and people liked it then, but I don't like the material and everything. I don't know if it'll like ever stand the test of time, but I mean, that's cool that was like something that you liked at least then. So
yeah, definitely. And so, yeah, that was, the first band that you did, and you were able to put out 2 7-inch records through that band. And where did you guys get to tour in that band?
Oh man. So that band was cool because like for me, like I traveled a little bit, but not like a ton, right? So I'd been to Miami several times, Michigan and stuff. But Jesse had, Jesse was real motivated. So like we started the band like late summer, 2008, had the demo and the demo and the first show, December 30th, 2008. By that late winter, early spring, we were doing a weekend, and we were supposed to play Chicago, and I'd never been to Chicago. So we were supposed to play Chicago, which was the Punks Don't Drink Volume 2 show, which we were trying to hop on really bad. But we ended up not playing. We played Toledo, Bowling Green, and maybe that was it, actually. It was supposed to be like a 3-day thing, but it ended up maybe just being 2 shows. But, we got to do stuff like that. We toured out East twice, which was cool. Stuff places I'd never had been to before and never thought I would be able to go to. The idea of being in a band and growing up with this idea of playing music and then being able to like travel on it. And like, let's face it, like most people listen to like hardcore punk and thinks it's like absolute dog shit to their ears, right? But like people that get it and understand it, like that can take you as anywhere you want to go, right? As long as you respect it. And, with Sorry Excuse, I learned that as well. And, we got to do a lot of cool stuff with that. And, it was kind of like my entry into like what that world is like, what it's like to play in front of people,
Mm-hmm. And, Sorry Excuse was a straight edge band. And so what point in like your, dive into hardcore and punk did you kind of realize that you were going to be straight edge? Like, is that like a mindset that you had before you got into the music, or were you exposed to it through like listening to bands and stuff?
No, not at all. So basically, when I was like younger and stuff, like I like knew what alcohol tasted like. I'd never been drunk. I'd never done drugs. I knew what cigarettes tasted like, I guess. But I don't know. I just never really liked it. And then, I don't know. I guess it's one of those things that like, then you find out that like, oh, like I'm not just like that dog from the Dare commercials. Like I am that dog, but, there's, straight edge is a kind of like something that's tied in a little bit more with like, kind of like those punk ideals to a certain extent. And so I think once I figured that out, it just kind of made sense. Right. I went through like a period of time where I thought it was like kind of weird to like label yourself straight edge. So like a real funny story is Dylan, one of my best friends who plays in a few incredible bands, Inner Alter and Kiev and a bunch of others. We're sitting at the like playground at the Liberty High School, and I remember talking to him and being like, "Man, I don't think you should claim edge. Like I just think it's like so." And like during this time period, this was like when like you would see like straight edge stuff being sold at like Hot Topic. I mean, there was like whole bastardization of this whole like straight edge movement, and I was just like, dude, you shouldn't do it or whatever. And I remember he was like, whatever. So he went by X Dylan Drugs X or whatever for a while, like on MySpace or whatever. And and then he ended up breaking edge or whatever, like, and so which is whatever. But it just kind of like one of those things. I went through this period. I was like, I don't want to like label myself as anything, and I just am what I am, And I would say like now, like my mindset with it is like very much the same. I'm 28. Don't drink, don't do drugs, still straight edge. I'm not like militant or anything about any of those things, but at least for me, it works and until it doesn't, right? So,
yeah. And so what kind of like stuff, like you said, straight edge stuff was being like sold at Hot Topic at that point? Like what kind of stuff was that?
You had like shirts and like shorts, just the 3X's straight edge. You could buy like the fake, like, straight edge like swatches and stuff, and like a lot of the bands, like that whole metalcore movement of like the mid 2000s when like Throwdown was getting really big and like 18 Visions was getting big, and those bands that were like popular, like Bleeding Through, like popular bands that were like kind of repping that like whole straight edge thing and talking about it a lot or whatever. everybody and their grandmother that was into any type of extreme music, didn't even have to be metalcore, like was like, yeah, I'm straight edge, especially in high school. It's like, no, you're not. I remember a band in particular, like Liberty had a few bands going on there, you know, Dylan's band, This Is a War, and then there's Manhattan Massacre, and like there was like just like a lot of bands around that time that were just like trying to claim like straight edge, and it was just like, it became like a gimmick, you know. It was just like, all right, like this is silly because the people that like aren't part of this whole trend or whatever, like it just makes everybody look stupid, right? So that was kind of like my whole thing. Like, I don't want to like look like an idiot, you know, but then you just don't care because you're in high school and you're like, fuck it, whatever, you know?
So, you know, over the years, kind of seeing some of your friends that you had been like in straight edge bands with and like in the scene with for some time, like seeing them break edge, was that something that was like at least like initially like disheartening for you, or were you able to like kind of brush that aside pretty easily?
I would say not one of them ever like was ever disheartening to me. There would be people, there's friends of mine who are no longer straight edge now, but they would get really upset about it. They'd get bummed out about it. And I think the reason why it just never bothered me is like my relationships with a lot of my friends are not based in like straight edge, right? And I would say, you know, I'd be lying if I didn't say they weren't based in music, right? But there's a lot of other things that strengthen that relationship and that friendship. So, you know, for me, it's just my only ever concern was always like, you know, if that's something you want to do, like, and if, you know, just making sure it's for like the right reasons, like I would much rather you just like someone just like smoke weed or whatever, or drink a beer just because they want to, and not because they feel pressured because of a relationship that they're in or society or whatever it may be. Because then at that point, like, you know, you're not really making those decisions for yourself. You're making them with the idea of that it will kind of benefit, you know, someone else's ideology, right? And ideas of how they perceive the way that you should be living your life, you know? So for me, it never bothered me at all. I've never, up until this point, I've not been bummed out or even surprised by people that break edge. I think I would say most of all of my friends were straight edge at one point in time, and now all of them, except for a handful, aren't anymore, you know? So, but there was a scene, you know, Kansas City had a pretty healthy, like, straight edge scene, straight edge hardcore bands, and just, you know, it was just awesome, you know, or just people being like involved like with straight edge and I don't mean involved like there's like some club or whatever, but you know, just like, you know, like especially being in bands and music stuff like that, you kind of know like from city to city, like generally like who are like, you know, the oldest people that are like straight edge, right? You know, think of like Boston, you think of guys like DFJ and like Doug Free, you know, you think of like those guys that like, you know, John and Chicago, you know, you just think about like, you know, that stuff, especially people that have like an impact on music, which is kind of cool, but we just don't really have that anymore. I actually don't even know who the oldest person is in Kansas City anymore that's straight edge. It used to be Shroud, but he's not. And then I don't know who is. Maybe Vegan Neil. Yeah, probably Vegan Neil. Unless he's not straight edge anymore, which maybe, I don't know.
In the comments section, please let us know if you are straight edge.
That'd be awesome, actually. Good to know.
Like, everyone in Kansas City who's straight edge, I think, needs to comment on this video and let us know your status, you know, if you've been straight edge within the last 5 years.
Exactly. Or if not, you're on Edge Watch.
Oh, man. Just, like, seeing that whole, like I'm not even, like, close friends with, like, all the guys from, like, that have been in, like, Sorry Excuse and Kicked In and all the Kansas City straight edge bands, but, like, kind of seeing, like, the wave of, like, people breaking edge, like, on social media, at least, was, like, at least kind of funny to watch.
Yeah,
like,
I mean, the thing that I remember when Jesse broke edge, which is, like, not surprising because, like, this dude was, like, he was probably secret sipping the whole time. He would do this thing where I'd be like hanging out because he'd always want to see if he'd get a rise out of me, and he would like he'd be like get a beer or whatever, and he would like put a little bit in his mouth and just like kind of like just take a little like a little sip, or then he would like spit it out and like he'd be like, what do you think about that? I don't think anything about it, like whatever. And so then eventually he broke edge. I remember I was like on a cruise or something like that, which is like a funny story, but I was like on a cruise and you can't like there's no like service or whatever. So then I got like hit up a bunch like, oh, Jesse broke edge, and then I can't remember who else broke edge that weekend, but somebody else did. So it was like two people. It was like double whammy.
Maybe it was Tunks. Like,
no, I remember when Tunks did. That was it was way after that. But yeah, so I mean, It was hilarious. I mean, it kind of turned into like a spectacle to a certain extent, you know? I mean, I was entertained, but I think a lot of people, I think Thrasher told me one point in time that I think after the last person that broke Ed, she was like, yeah, you're going to be next. I'm like, well, maybe. I don't know. I don't think so, but whatever.
So, yeah, and, Sorry Excuse kind of ran its course and had a bit of a quiet ending, like we discussed. Like, you played that Salvation show at the Bad House, and that was kind of it. So then you start Spine, either like a little before.
Well, let me just interject.
Yeah, go.
Sorry Excuse did not end softly.
Yeah.
Yeah. So and I don't mean like it ended on like a bad note or anything, but that was a band that we actually had songs that we had. I don't know if it was like 6 to 8 songs that we were actually we had recorded rough tracks for that we wanted to do an LP for, and I think it just got to a point where people just became disinterested in it that were in the band, and but I would say that like, and that's why it ended. Really, was just because like we just weren't as into it, but we still had material, good material that we actually recorded it. I don't know if you actually ever heard it. Did you ever hear the song we did it was for like the Failed Punks Don't Drink Volume 3?
If you posted it on Bandcamp, I probably heard it.
Well, I don't think Sorry Excuse posted it. I think Third Party Records posted the song, and we did 2 songs for it, but like most people never heard it, right? Because we just kind of stopped doing it then. But that definitely was like a thing that like, and that's probably why like I'm more like, I've always been kind of weird about like ever doing like getting together to do a last show or whatever. It's because like, I love all the guys and everything like that, but I kind of feel like even though I don't feel like it ran its course, it was like forced to run its course. And I think because of that, I think it's just better to just kind of like leave it the way that it is, you know?
Okay.
But yeah, I mean, I would have liked to have like reached that kind of potential, you know, with any project that you do, whatever it is, you want to feel comfortable just being like, okay, like whatever happens now, like I've done everything I wanted to do with it, collectively, obviously if you're with other people. And I just kind of feel like, you know, we didn't get to that point, but it just kind of came to a point because we just didn't. We just weren't as interested. Not everybody was as interested in it. So
okay, so I guess that was kind of a misconception.
Well, most people don't know that because I don't ever talk about it. This is an exclusive for Shuttlecock.
Damn. So either like a little before Sorry Excuse ended or a little after Spine got going.
Yeah, it was like a little before like Sorry Excuse ended. I want to say Sorry Excuse. Like we'd announced, Sorry Excuse announced an LP that was going to come out on a final LP that was going to come out, and it just didn't even like happen. And so, but that was around the time that Spine had started, and we had started, and then by 2012 we had the demo had been out by the end of 2011 for Spine, and by 2012, you know, we went on a tour with Weekend Nachos out to California with Dead in the Dirt, and we did a weekend out there, and I think. Came back, I think 2013 was when that Salvation gig was, probably sometime in the spring, the show that I booked. And then that was it. But yeah, so it started just a little bit before.
And yeah, I have a particular memory about that Spine Dead in the Dirt run.
I bet you do.
Where they were, well, maybe lack of memory is a better term. That's the show where I got my nose broke and a concussion because Thrasher just threw an elbow in my face and I had no idea what was going on.
He's a bad guy. He's a bad guy.
He apologized after that.
He was pretty scared.
Yeah,
he was pretty scared. He thought you were going to call the cops.
Oh, nah.
But you know, honestly, I think at that point in time, I remember because I'd talk to you like coming to shows and stuff like that, and I remember like people were kind of freaking out because I had booked that show. I got in a city ordinance, sound ordinance, because it was Cinco de Mayo, I think, that night, or it was like Cinco de Mayo weekend or something like that. And so I remember like Thrasher coming up to me and he's like really afraid that they're gonna call the cops or whatever. I was like, I think it'll be fine. Like, don't worry about it. Like, you know, he's cool. And I think at that point in time, I think that's where like you had like some instant credibility because you could have easily called the cops on him, right? And not necessarily you, like your dad, you know, because like
I'm not a cop caller. No, yeah, my parents were like, "Hey, well, I don't think anybody wanted to call the cops. I think my parents were just like, who did this? Maybe they should pay for the medical bills."
Yeah.
I think that was more of a concern. But I was like, like I think I just talked him out of it.
Yeah.
So
No, it makes sense, you know. But I mean, who knows? If it was my kid, I don't know what I would do.
Yeah.
But yeah. So
that's a fun memory.
Great memory.
I have from that. I think my nose is still like a little bit like off center, but
let me see.
like it points upwards at an angle. I think I don't know. Maybe it doesn't.
Damn, dude. Fuck. No, it looks good.
Okay, so yeah, Spine. Started being a thing back then. You've been working up to the point where you have several records, and you're about to put out this next LP with Bridge 9. But also recently, you have started another band that you sing in called Contrast.
Oh, yeah,
Can you tell me about that band?
Yeah, so Contrast basically started because of Jacob and Max wanted to start a band that sounded more. They wanted to do it. I had initially actually talked to a few of my friends that were still straight edge in Kansas City that we should do a straight edge band and just do it whenever we can or whatever, but just do like a few songs or whatever. Well, it didn't end up working out because there was just two different ideas of what they wanted to do band wise, and so the straight edge band ended up becoming No Quarter. They're not a straight edge band, but that became No Quarter, and then Contrast became Contrast. So, and Contrast was more traditional, like kind of like Cleveland hardcore, kind of like that harder edge stuff, and which is stuff I really love and wanted to do, and so. And I wanted to try like a different vocal style and just a different thing, and so that's kind of like how that band kind of came about, really.
So I don't know. I feel like I'm starting to notice like a pattern of like all these bands that you've sung in. Like Sorry Excuse is going along, and right before it ends, you start Spine. So maybe I don't know. I don't want to assume anything, but like maybe Spine won't be a band for too much longer, and you'll just throw my energy into Contrast. I don't know.
I highly doubt it.
You doubt it? Yeah.
I highly doubt it, only because I think that Contrast is pretty. The cool thing about Contrast is like every band I've been in, I've had to kind of like really move a lot with it, whether it's like doing mail order or kind of booking the shows or do whatever it needs to do. Contrast is a little bit more. It's just a little bit different, and so it's something I pay like less mind to, and it's kind of a thing too. I mean, we've played like 4 shows since we've been a band, and the last time we played was in was it Louisville or did we play Springfield? I think it was Louisville. We played Louisville the pre-show for that Midwest Blood, but. Since then we haven't played, and we actually haven't even practiced, right? So, I mean, we've talked about playing shows and this and that, but I don't know. I don't really see that as I think I just see it as more of like kind of like a fun alternative outlet. I think if Spine ceased from being a band at any point in time, I'm not sure like what I would do like musically. I would like to do something. I would like to play in a band, honestly. I have a bass, and I like fuck around with it all the time. But I like to actually play in a band, because I've like fronted a bunch of bands. And I like fronting a band. I think that's awesome. But making the music would be great too, And I do a little bit of that. I'm lying. I actually have only written one song, and it was really just a riff that I lifted off of a Typo Negative song that I slowed down. So, but yeah. So that's basically kind of like where I'm at. But I like your thinking.
Yeah. I like trying to put stuff into narratives even when it's not. So
yeah, I can already see the headline now,
Oh man, I'm not trying to like go all clickbait and on.
Yeah.
Like no.
I don't know, man. I wouldn't be surprised if you put this up online and put a picture of like me punching like, an old lady or something like that, just to get people to click on it.
Man, I'm not like DJ Vlad or whatever. Like
I don't know. It could work. He's got a lot of views.
You are pretty into hip hop as well, though, right?
Yeah, I love it.
I don't know if I don't think you've ever really been like truly involved or like made hip hop music, but you follow the genre pretty closely, right?
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I write a lot, anyways, and so sometimes like I'll write like just raps. I don't really have beats in mind, I've done like some like really bad freestyling stuff just for fun, like in the studio before, but I haven't really ever been like involved really in that. And it's funny you bring that up too. Even like the local scene, like I know like probably like I actually know like probably 5 local artists, maybe 6. And then the ones that I like that I've listened to, but the ones that I've like probably know about are mostly through you. Because as far as like a vehicle goes, like local hip hop and rap is so all over the place. Like everybody's got kind of like a different thing going on. There's not like a group, like a set group of like, crew. I mean, aside from like those strange music guys, but like, there's just like not like a cohesive kind of like scene there that I see, and so it's a little bit intimidating to kind of get into stuff because like you've got people from the Dot, you've got people from Independence.
Yeah, so you never really know like what show will be.
Yeah, no idea. Yeah, I mean, I want to say Stick Figure was like the first local artist and he's from Topeka. I think.
He's great.
He's awesome. I can't remember. I think I got introduced to him maybe at like one of the Pitch Awards that we were nominated at, and I like got really into him. I think he's an incredible artist, but I mean, the guy's in Topeka, right? So it's like the scene here is just like very different and kind of intimidating. It's not like the hardcore scene. You've got a lot of like it's kind of incestuous with band members and stuff like that, and guys playing with each other's shows a bunch. So it's just it's kind of a different beast. But anyways, I love rap, love hip hop.
Yeah, and I do like. I follow it pretty closely, and like there are like a couple like kind of factions that I've kind of seen forming lately. So hopefully. Both of those or like maybe just a handful of those can kind of solidify at some point, like this year or next year. And like you can kind of start to grow like, a larger outside following with them. So I hope that's something that can happen soon. Cause I understand that it definitely could be kind of intimidating.
It'd be a great opportunity. I mean, it's a great opportunity to just sit there and just think about just like branding yourself as, your crew. I know like of a few smaller ones, like my buddy, like King Lamont, like he just moved out to LA. But like he's got a crew of guys that works with like King Doe's and all those guys. But I just think like if there was like a bigger kind of branding of it, and if Kansas City had kind of like more of a traditional style. I'm sorry, not traditional, but like kind of like like that Kansas City style. If there was like an established Kansas City style that wasn't like what people assume is just anything that sounds like Tech Nine, would be cool too. Because I mean, having like someone like Tech Nine to like rep the city as hard as he does is great. But you don't really see a lot of people kind of falling in line with that style. A lot of people think that like that Kansas City style is like the kind of horror rap stuff that Strange Music kind of like. Help kind of develop like, years ago, right? That it's probably not even relevant anymore, but that's not what people think about, right? So, I think it would be great. So I'm definitely looking forward to that.
And so where did your like interest in hip hop stem also?
My parents. So like I said before, my dad grew up in West New York, New Jersey. So which is just right across the Hudson River from Manhattan. So my dad spent a lot of time in New York, and that's how he got into punk and hardcore. But most importantly, rap and hip hop. My dad was in a breakdancing crew. So like growing up, like rap was like a big thing, like at the house. My dad now doesn't listen to any rap. He doesn't like it at all. He actually doesn't listen to much anything except for talk radio, right? He's like super lame dad at this point. Except last week, we were driving to Minneapolis, and I caught him singing to Champagne Supernova by Oasis in the car. It was hilarious. But anyways, it was my dad and my mom too. So, and my parents are really young. My mom was 17 and my dad was 18 when they had me. So, and this was 88. So, we listened to a lot of, especially like the East Coast, West Coast stuff, like growing up. So that was like a huge staple, like Dre, Nas, Tupac, Biggie, Snoop, like, all like when that exploded, it exploded, right? And so it just hit every corner. And I grew up listening to that stuff unedited. I remember getting a Warren G CD, the Warren G Regulate CD. And then I remember my dad taking it away from me only because I had curse words in it. And ever since then, I was just like so like infatuated with like wanting to listen to music in its purest form, like not any of the edited stuff. I wanted to listen to it for what it was. But that was kind of like my entry level into like rap and hip hop. And then of course, I remember when Tupac died, I remember when Biggie died. I also remember the entire like South explosion. So I would say that like I listened to rap and hip hop up until like Tupac and Biggie died. I started paying attention much more to it when the South kind of rose, when it came with, with No Limit Records and Cash Money. Like that was really like, that's probably like the era I was really into, and that's what really like catapulted me into the stuff I listen to now. So
you're a big Wayne fan?
I do. I love Wayne. Yeah, I think Wayne's incredible. I think even now, like I would say, like I have no idea if his next record's gonna be shit or not, right? But the one thing that Wayne has is something that gets copied a lot, whether it's his style gets copied a lot. I would say, he may not have like full records, but he's definitely got bars still. And I think there's a lot of modern rappers need to give it up to someone like Wayne, because he kind of like invented this whole like, play on words like thing, which a lot of rappers take up now. So a lot of people like to say a lot of, this and that about him. But I mean, at one point in time, he was regarded as like the GOAT, right? Now people probably put him in the top 5 and stuff, or top 10 maybe, but probably more top 10. But I mean, I think Wayne was awesome. My favorite though from the era was Master P, Percy Miller. I mean, I remember watching the Make 'Em Say On music video. It was so sick. I got a wife beater and wrote No Limit Records on it and wore it to school. I did one for Rough Riders too, for DMX. Like, loved that stuff, right? It was just different. Like, I don't know, it was awesome, right?
And so it's kind of unsure where Wayne's like creative career is really at right now, because he's like stuck in this weird like record limbo. But the other day, like I don't know why like they chose to do it like so recently, but have you heard about the T-Pain Lil Wayne tape that just
T-Wayne?
Like, yeah, T-Wayne.
Yeah. It was like almost 10 years in the making. Yeah,
I listened to that the other day, and like, you can tell it was made, in the 2000s. It has that same sound, and like it was a lot of fun to listen to. I don't know if you've heard any of that.
I saw it got released last week, but I haven't listened to it yet. I'll have to check it out for sure. Yeah, I think T-Pain released it, right? Was that the rumor that he's the one that kind of like finally leaked it?
Yeah, I would have to guess that it was him. So yeah. So that's I think that's definitely worth checking out if you're a fan of like just classic era Wayne.
Absolutely, yeah.
But you've also You've been into like, I don't know, I've had conversations with you about a lot of different rap over the years, and I know you told me that I think you attended the first Drake show that came to Kansas.
No, I wanted to.
You missed out on
it at the gym, at the gymnasium. Okay. I do like Drake though, so like, if you want to talk shit, but I do like Drake. So
Drake makes some good music.
Yeah,
more life, more tune for your head top.
Yeah. Everything.
More podcasts for your shuttlecock.
Damn, look at you. No. Holy shit. Wow. That's awesome.
It's just, off the dome,
Off the dome.
But yeah, I think, we've got about an hour here. I guess we'll kind of wrap up. So just to recap, what should people be looking out for, just regarding your music and everything you've been working on?
Yeah, I guess, just be on the lookout for the next Spine record. We've got a gig coming up here in 2 weeks at the Encore Room with Give and Protester, Youth Pool, and Altered Beast. So yeah, I mean, I would just say check it out. Come to shows. Start zines. Start blogs. Start bands. Doesn't matter what it sounds like. Doesn't matter what you want to write about. Like, just do something. Just come out. People are friendly. So
awesome. Well, I appreciate you coming through and just sitting down with me here for this.
Yeah, absolutely. No problem. Awesome. Shuttlecock for life. Actually, I tried to get into the show yesterday. Told Jacob, I said I was part of Shuttlecock, and he wouldn't let me in. So
it's not quite a universal thing yet. I'm working on just getting that all set up.
Rule reporter.
Yeah, I'll say I'm with them at
just say with
another
them.
show.
Yeah, exactly.
I'm sure it'll be
it'll work.
Easy.
100%.
Awesome.
All right, man.
Well, thanks for coming through.
Yep.